The first thing you need to understand is that almost everyone has the wrong image in their head. When most people hear about the military of this country, they imagine a conventional NATO force wedged between Europe and the Middle East. Maybe they think of old armored vehicles, outdated jets, or a regional player defined more by politics than by hard power. But that picture is wrong, because right now, a dramatic military transformation is underway. It is fast, it is ambitious, and it has already started to change the balance of power across an entire region. In fact, you could argue that this is one of the most underestimated fighting forces in the Western Alliance. A force that is not just growing stronger, but more independent, more unpredictable, and far more dangerous in strictly military terms than most analysts are willing to admit. To understand why, you have to go where most militaries never go, into real, continuous combat. Environments where soldiers learn through blood, adaptation, and hard experience, rather than through theory or simulation. Turkey has lived in that reality for decades, fighting insurgents in mountains, clearing urban strongholds, conducting night raids, engaging hostile groups across borders. That constant friction has shaped everything that follows: doctrine, technology, industry, strategy, even foreign policy. If you want to understand how a military becomes genuinely dangerous in capability, this is where the story begins. For more than 40 years, forces here have been in near constant counterinsurgency operations against the PKK in the rugged southeastern terrain and along the border regions with Iraq. These are not symbolic patrols. They involve real casualties, rapid tactical decisions, and units working in environments where intelligence, mobility, and improvisation matter more than textbook maneuvers. Special forces move through deep mountainous regions at night, often under harsh weather conditions. Helicopters weave through narrow valleys at low altitude. Small units hunt fighters who know the terrain intimately. Every misstep is punished. Every engagement forces evolution. Over time, this produces not just experienced soldiers, but an institution that understands how to adapt under pressure. Then came Syria. The civil war and the rise of ISIS sent shockwaves across the region and turned the border into one of the most volatile frontiers on Earth. In response, the Turkish military launched a series of cross-border operations that changed its identity. Euphrates Shield, Olive Branch, Peace Spring, Spring Shield. Each of these campaigns forced the armed forces to fight as a modern combined arms machine, infantry pushing into contested towns, armored vehicles moving under the umbrella of electronic warfare systems, artillery guided by real-time surveillance, airstrikes coordinated with ground advances, and drone feeds. Instead of long-planned, slow-moving deployments, these were fast, flexible operations that demanded constant coordination and adaptation. These campaigns were not fought in isolation either. At the same time, aviation units struck targets in northern Iraq, security forces suppressed attacks at home, intelligence networks expanded. The result is an institution that has spent years in a state of real operational readiness. There is a reason why analysts across NATO quietly acknowledge something that rarely appears in public speeches. The Turkish Armed Forces is among the more combat-experienced forces in the alliance. Not because it seeks conflict, but because its geography and threats have forced it to fight repeatedly. And combat experience is the one advantage no amount of money can simply buy overnight. But experience is only the beginning. Real transformation began when leaders realized they could no longer rely on foreign suppliers for critical weapons. Arms embargoes, export restrictions, political tension over procurement. All of that pushed the state toward a strategic decision nearly 2 decades ago. If allies would not reliably provide key systems, then the country would build them itself. That decision changed everything. Today, officials and industry sources claim that around 70% of national defense procurement needs can be met domestically. That means most new systems entering service are designed or manufactured at home. Armored vehicles, guided rockets and missiles, naval platforms, communication networks, air defense systems, and one of the most influential drone programs in modern warfare. And drones are where the story becomes global. You cannot talk about modern military technology without mentioning the Bayraktar TB2. This relatively small, unmanned aircraft reshaped the dynamics of several conflicts. In Syria, it hunted armored vehicles and air defense systems. In Libya, it helped shift momentum between rival factions. In Nagorno-Karabakh in 2020, it contributed to overwhelming traditional defenses and armored formations. In the early months of the war in Ukraine, it became a symbol of resistance, with footage of strikes spreading across social media and international television. On paper, the TB2 is not an invincible superweapon. It is a light UAV carrying a modest payload. But what mattered was not the individual drone. What mattered was the doctrine behind it: persistent surveillance for the battlefield. Precision strikes on high-value targets, low-cost attrition against expensive systems, high mobility allowing rapid repositioning, network targeting where data from drones feeds artillery, special forces, and other platforms. This state did not just manufacture a drone. It developed a philosophy of drone warfare and proved it in multiple real conflicts. Then came Akinci, a high-altitude, long-endurance unmanned aircraft with the ability to carry heavier munitions, including standoff cruise missiles. With Akinci, missions that once demanded manned strike aircraft could, in theory, be carried out by unmanned platforms. Suddenly, the gap between traditional fighter-bomber roles and drone capabilities began to narrow. Just as the rest of the world started to grasp the scale of this drone revolution, another shock appeared. Kizilelma is an unmanned fighter concept, a stealthy, jet-powered aircraft designed to operate from relatively short runways and to eventually fly from the deck of TCG Anadolu, the country's flagship amphibious assault ship. Kizilelma represents a leap into the next era of air combat. It promises lower operating costs than manned stealth aircraft, the possibility of being deployed in larger numbers, and increasing levels of autonomy in mission execution. Test flights and development milestones show that this is not just a CGI project. It is an active program moving step by step from concept to capability. Behind these drones sits a vast industrial ecosystem. Companies like Baykar, Roketsan, Aselsan, STM, and Havelsan form the core of a domestic defense network. They produce advanced sensors, data links, guidance systems, cruise missiles, air defense components, communication gear, command software, and electronic warfare suites. They work together to integrate hardware and software into a cohesive system of systems. For other countries watching from the outside, this has enormous implications. When a state develops most of its key weapons domestically, it gains control over its own strategy. Procurement is no longer held hostage by foreign parliaments or export licenses. Political disagreements hurt less. Domestic upgrades become faster. Independence becomes a form of power in itself, and this country is steadily moving toward full independence in almost every major category of conventional weaponry. Missile development is another area where this transformation is obvious. Systems like the Bora tactical ballistic missile gave the land forces longer-range precision strike options. The Taifun missile test drew global attention when officials reported a range significantly greater than earlier systems, pushing into a class that begins to approach medium range. Defense industry spokespeople have openly discussed a family of missiles, including projects referred to as SANK that would extend reach even further. For military planners in neighboring regions, an expanding arsenal of short and medium-range ballistic and cruise missiles changes calculations. Air bases, ports, logistics hubs, and command centers that once felt relatively safe suddenly fall within potential strike radius. Deterrence and offensive capability grow together. At the same time, the Air Force is quietly evolving. Legacy F-16s remain the core fighter platform, but they are being upgraded with new avionics, radars, data links, and domestically produced precision munitions. Indigenous beyond visual range air-to-air missiles and standoff weapons are being integrated. Every successful integration means less dependency on imported payloads and more freedom in operations. And then there is KAAN. This is the flagship ambition project, a fifth-generation fighter program aimed at producing a stealthy, AI-assisted long-range tactical aircraft. KAAN is still far from full operational capability, but tangible progress has been made. Taxi sea tests and early flight phases have begun. The design aims to eventually replace older jets and give the Air Force a domestically controlled next-generation platform. Whether KAAN will match the full performance of other fifth-generation fighters remains to be seen, but the intent behind it is impossible to miss. The goal is complete sovereignty in the air domain. Yet the rise of the Turkish armed forces is not limited to the sky or to missile ranges. The sea is becoming one of its most important arenas. For decades, naval strategy focused on defending coastlines and projecting limited presence in surrounding waters. That era is over. A new maritime framework known as the Blue Homeland strategy calls for a broader maritime posture across the Mediterranean, the Aegean, and the Black Sea. This is not just rhetorical posturing in speeches, it is backed by shipbuilding and deployment decisions. The Milgem project has produced a line of modern corvettes and frigates equipped with contemporary sensors and weapon systems. Submarine fleets are being renewed with advanced designs featuring quieter propulsion and better underwater awareness. These vessels are not just floating symbols, they're tools for sustained presence in contested waters. The ship that most clearly symbolizes this new maritime doctrine is TCG Anadolu. Initially envisioned in part for operations with short takeoff and vertical landing jets, it has been reconfigured as a hub for unmanned aircraft. That effectively makes it one of the world's earliest drone carriers. The ability to deploy armed drones from a naval platform extends surveillance and strike coverage deep into surrounding seas. It merges the country's strength in unmanned systems with its naval ambitions in a way that few other militaries have even attempted. Beneath the waves, upgraded submarines provide deterrence and intelligence gathering. On the surface, new frigates and corvettes patrol contested zones. From the air, drones range across maritime boundaries. All of this supports a more assertive naval presence in regions where energy resources, sea lanes, and sovereignty claims intersect. But what truly binds the land, sea, and air components together is something often overlooked by casual observers: electronic warfare and the broader information domain. Few modern militaries place as much visible emphasis on electronic warfare as this one. Systems such as Coral are designed to jam enemy radars, disrupt communication systems, and degrade the effectiveness of hostile air defenses. In real operations, especially in northern Syria, electronic warfare support played a crucial role in enabling precision drone strikes. When enemy sensors and radars cannot see accurately, their ability to defend themselves is weakened. That opens windows of opportunity for strikes that would otherwise be too risky. Alongside electronic warfare, cyber capabilities have been expanding. Cyber units contribute to intelligence collection, defensive operations, and, according to open reporting, offensive digital actions. In a world where critical infrastructure, communications, and even weapon systems are increasingly digital, the cyber domain is no longer a side note. It is part of the core of national security. All of these capabilities are amplified by geography. This country sits at the literal crossroads between continents. It serves as a land bridge between Europe and Asia, and as a gateway to the Middle East. Turkey controls the Bosphorus and Dardanelles, the straits that connect the Black Sea to the Mediterranean. It lies near some of the world's most important energy corridors, including pipelines and maritime routes. It borders unstable conflict zones and also faces major NATO allies across the water. Geography alone does not make a military powerful, but when a state invests heavily in modernizing its forces and then places them astride some of the most critical choke points on Earth, its influence multiplies. Decisions made in its capital affect the ability of others to move fleets, reinforce allies, or pressure adversaries. And then we arrive at the factor that makes the world pay attention more and more each year: strategic posture. This military does not simply wait for alliance mandates. It acts on what it perceives as its national interests, sometimes in ways that diverge from the preferences of other NATO members. Turkey conducts operations in Syria without waiting for unanimous agreement. It strikes targets in northern Iraq when it believes threats are emerging there. It supports friendly governments and factions in places such as Libya. Its drones have shaped outcomes in conflicts far from its borders. It enforces maritime claims in disputed waters around the eastern Mediterranean. It simultaneously maintains dialogue with Western allies and engages with non-Western powers. This combination of alliance membership and independent action creates a form of strategic unpredictability. For neighboring states and major powers alike, that unpredictability must be factored into every calculation, a force that operates under its own timelines, with its own arsenal and its own doctrine, can surprise opponents and unsettle rivals. There is another layer to this story as well. The ground forces are not just battle-hardened, they are also being modernized. Indigenous main battle tank projects like ALTE, new infantry fighting vehicles, modern artillery systems, tactical UAVs at battalion level, and improved communications all contribute to a more networked army. Special operations units have become a core instrument of foreign policy, appearing in theaters from northern Iraq to northern Syria. Air mobile and mechanized formations can be deployed quickly inside and beyond the country's borders. At the same time, this state is becoming an increasingly important arms exporter. Its drones are now operated by multiple countries. Its armored vehicles, naval platforms, and electronic systems are appearing in foreign militaries. Every export contract does two things. It brings in revenue and political influence, and it also finances further research, development, and economies of scale in the domestic defense sector. Of course, no military is without limitations. Economic pressures, inflation, political tensions, reliance on some foreign components, and the complexity of sustaining high-tech systems all pose challenges. The KAAN program will require sustained investment and technological innovation. Naval ambitions depend on budgets and shipyard capacity. Operating in multiple theaters at once risks overstretch. But what makes this force noteworthy is that it is addressing many of these challenges with long-term planning and a clear desire for self-reliance. So what does all of this actually mean? It means that the world is waking up to a hard truth. This is not a regional force stuck in the past or a junior partner that simply follows others. It is a military establishment that has combined real combat experience, industrial independence, strategic geography, and cutting-edge technology into a single, ambitious vision. It is reshaping its neighborhood. It is influencing conflicts beyond its borders. It is positioning itself so that very few outside powers can easily dictate its strategic choices.